For those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure your cell phones have been turned off, and we welcome those of you who are online. This time the rabbi is going to perform the ancient ceremony of Kriya, the tearing of the ribbon. Yeah, sure. Shirley, can I get a keep up for the gentleman?
Oh, boy.
Okay, guys. Shani and Isla, if you guys want to stand, David will help you with your ribbons. We're going to tear them, and you'll recite a few words here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Just, you guys can repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Dayan ha'emet.
Dayan ha'emet.
What that means in English is, praised are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, righteous judge. Even in the midst of our sorrow and our loss, we remember that he is a righteous judge. Nothing happens that is beyond his control or understanding. He's allowed this to happen. And then repeat after me. Adonai Natan.
Adonai Natan.
Adonai Lakach.
Adonai
Yehi Shem.
Yehi Shem.
Adonai Mevarach.
Adonai Mevarach.
The Lord is given.
The Lord. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Actually, you can repeat this after me too. Okay. The Lord has given.
The Lord has given.
And the Lord has taken away.
The Lord has taken away.
Praised be the name of the Lord.
Praised be the name of the Lord.
May be seated. In the book of Isaiah, it says, a voice says, cry out, and I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all its beauty is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, when a wind of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall abide forever. We are here today to mourn the loss of our mother, our grandmother, our great-grandmother, our loved one, Mildred Weinstein. May God's psalms of comfort and these prayers of consolation bring encouragement to each one of us as we remember her life. Mildred was born on February 18th, 1925, the daughter of Robert and Hannah Schmidt of blessed memory, and along with her brother Alan of blessed memory, grew up in Chicago. Mildred's childhood was severely impacted by the very difficult time of the Depression. She spoke to me personally of the hunger and even homelessness she experienced during that time, struggles that left a lasting impact on her. Despite not having the opportunity growing up to be an active member of a synagogue herself or to receive, as she was always talking about it, religious education, all right? As an adult, she and her family were members here in Skokie, or there in Skokie, first at B'nai Emunah and then the Niles Township Jewish Congregation, where she made sure that her daughters, Lynn and Isla, received their Jewish education complete with bat mitzvahs, Mildred herself eventually celebrating her own bat mitzvah well later in her 60s, which is quite an accomplishment. I first met Mildred in 2011 when she showed up one Shabbat morning for services out of sheer curiosity. I went this, and I swiped that, and that's what. Sheer curiosity. She dropped in because she wanted to see who we were. I'm really happy that she did. Mildred has been a real blessing to our synagogue community. Yes, Mildred often would speak quite bluntly and speak her mind, but this was also wonderful, as you knew exactly what she was thinking. You knew exactly where you were. She often asked me very pointed questions about life, Jewish tradition, and about faith. And it was a great privilege for me to see her faith in God grow over these years while she was with us. Mildred always seemed to be curious and fearless, at least to me. I don't know about you, but she always seemed curious and fearless. Wasn't afraid to ask, wasn't afraid to challenge. In late 2014 and early 2015, Mildred underwent a very serious heart surgery, which, though successful, required a caregiver and oxygen. And Maria played a tremendous role in those years. Despite this, she remained an active, regular part of the RMH community until the very recent pandemic this last year. In fact, they would come with oxygen and every week. Then, and even with the pandemic, she logged on through Zoom every week. It was wonderful until just actually this last Shabbat. This afternoon, we sorrow in the loss of our loved one, who we will all sorely miss. But let us also celebrate Mildred's life, lived with tenacity, curiosity, and fearlessness. And we're here to celebrate those amazing characteristics that Mildred exemplified. Another reading from Psalm 103, it says, "Tender as a father with his children, the Lord is merciful with his worshipers. He knows how we are fashioned. He remembers that we are but dust. The days of man are as grass. He flourishes as a flower in the field. The wind passes over it and it is gone. No one can recognize where it grew. But the Lord's compassion for his worshipers, his righteousness to children's children remain age after age, unchanging." Another reading from the book of Psalm 24 says, "The earth is the Lord's and its fullness. The world is his and all its inhabitants. He founded the world upon the seas. He set it firm upon flowing waters. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who takes not God's name in vain, swearing falsely. He will receive a blessing from the Lord, a just reward from his God of deliverance. Such is the generation of those who seek God, who like Jacob long for his presence." And I guess the question we should be asking ourselves is, do we long for the presence of God in our lives? I was always, my interactions with Mildred, some of the spiritual questions, there was a curiosity in her to know God. And I know she didn't start out that way when she first started coming. She was a little cynical, honestly. But a genuine desire to know God. Hopefully we all have that desire to know God, because one day our lives will end. And knowing God does make a difference, I believe. "Fear God, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will sustain you through my power." That's from the book of Isaiah. Psalm 23, and I believe that psalm is here. I'm going to ask that we read together Psalm 23. It's on the inside of the bulletin. All right, let's read it together. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." And that last statement, the dwelling in the house of the Lord forever, dwelling in the presence of God. I believe that Mildred is alive. I believe in the everlasting reality of the soul, and that Mildred is with God. I believe that because that's what that verse just said. And I know Mildred desired that. And that's a wonderful, comforting truth. Something to think about. Let's turn to Proverbs 31. You can't turn there. I'm sorry. I just turned to it. It's traditional to recite Proverbs 31 as we remember a loved one who's a woman. And again, I knew Mildred within a particular context, within our synagogue and the time she was with us. But the sense I got is that she was a very hardworking individual. I mean, you guys can maybe share about that. But Eshet Chayil is a woman who's living intentionally. There's an intentionality to her life, for her family, for her friends, an industrialistness to them, as well as the intentionality in terms of their relationship and their faith in God. And so I'm going to read Proverbs 31, Eshet Chayil, and then we're going to have family members share about Mildred's life. A good wife who can find? Her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and nothing shall he lack. She renders him good and not evil all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy. She extends her hand to the poor. She is robed in strength and dignity and cheerfully faces whatever may come. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She tends to the affairs of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband too, and he praises her. Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Place before her the fruit of her hands. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. I'm going to ask Isla if she would come up and share her thoughts regarding her mother.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. I planned it for today rather than Sunday because of the weather. Anyways, that was the main reason. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's watching on Zoom. My daughter Rachel and her husband Itza and her children Alan and Dawa and my sister Lynn and her husband Shlomo and their other two children, Ravid and Ariel. And I want to thank Shani who is my sister's oldest child, who came here especially to see my mom in her last days. She was able to share some wonderful time with her. Okay, so I'm going to move on to to talk about my mom. She grew up and was raised in Chicago. She was married to my father for about 27 years, and she had my sister Lynn and me. Her last 35 years, she lived in Lincolnwood in a townhouse that was built by my Uncle Alan. And I know that was a big reason why she chose that place, was because he built it. And another reason why she didn't leave it. She didn't want to leave it, maybe for the same reason. I'm not sure. Her townhouse had many steps, as most townhouses do, from the basement level up to the bedroom level. She had to navigate those steps for 35 years. So I think it kept her in pretty good shape. I think it has a lot to do with why she lived as long as she did, to 96. Having 2 open heart surgeries also helped. I don't think she could have done it without them. But anyways, the combination of those factors. So my mom was a homemaker, a volunteer, and she did work in a hospital office doing clerical work for a few years. But she, focused a lot on her family when she was younger. When she was older, the activities that she embraced were going to classes at Oakton Community College Senior Emeritus Program. She took exercise classes for seniors at the High Ridge Y for many years, and then she discovered Temple Devar Emet, and she was dedicated to go there. She really liked the people there. And it was, a Jewish community. And then she also spent a lot of time going to bingo at the Senior Levy Center. Thanks to Maria, her caregiver, who took her twice a week. Each place she went to, she met new people who became good friends of hers. Some of her friends in her younger years as an adult were Sylvia, Amy, who unfortunately predeceased my mom early on. There was Ruth, a college friend who lived in California. Roz, there was another friend, and there were a few other. I can visualize their face, but I just don't remember their names. And as my mom got older, the last 15 years, some of those friends were Marianne, a lady receptionist from the High Ridge Y who liked my mom very much, and my mom liked her. I don't remember her name. And there was another woman whose name was Lois, not my Auntie Lois, although my mom enjoyed being with my Auntie Lois too, but this woman's name was, different last name. And then, of course, she embraced my good friend and sister, Jean Felice, who's here, who my mom really enjoyed her talks with Jean, and when she was able to visit in person together with Jean. My mom also, anyways, I could go on. She knew, I just want to say the names in case ladies, whose name was Sandy, Ethel from Bingo, Rabbi Kirk, Robertson, Carla, Dawn and Robin, and others from Devar Emmett. And I really am thankful for all those people because it really made a difference in my mom's last years. My life as a child was a good one. I had the stability of a mother, a father, a sister, and grandparents, Hannah and Bob, who lived 5 blocks away, and I had Grandma Ray, Grandma Goldie, Great-Grandma Goldie. Family was very important to my mom, even to the very end of her life. We spent Passover and Hanukkah and Thanksgiving holidays with family, like my grandparents Hannah and Bob, and and Uncle Alan and Auntie Lois and their 4 girls, my cousins Bonnie, Ivy, Julie, Nancy. That were my younger years is when we did that. During those times in the 60s, there were also yearly forest preserve picnics that we went to. My mom loved those, and I think she missed those when they kind of petered out, but that was with the extended Schmidt family. So, okay, and thanks to my mom and dad, I had everything I needed or wanted as a child, such as clothes, toys, family, and friends. I never felt deprived. My childhood was overall a good one. My mom would sew clothes for me when I was a young child, and when I got older, she would take me to stores, to downtown Chicago or downtown Skokie. There were private type stores that we would go to. My mom loved her grandchildren, Rachel, Ben, son-in-law Itza, Shani, Ravid, Ariel, and her great-grandchildren Alan, Dawa, who was 3 weeks old now, Yarden, and Uriah, who live in Israel. She would always ask about them at the end of her life. I mean, really all the time, not just the end of her life, but including the end of her life. And we were fortunate to have a Zoom birthday party with many of these people, people from the Chicago area, people from Ann Arbor, in New York City and D.C. And she really enjoyed that. I think we all did. My mom was a good cook. She cooked more traditional, simple foods, nothing fancy. I don't think people did that in the 60s so much. Maybe they did, but anyways, I lived in a kosher style home, which I whatever. No treif. It wasn't kosher, strictly kosher, but kosher style. Some of my favorite foods my mom made would be her chicken fricassee, sweet whitefish, which was served cold in the summer, roasted tongue, lamb riblets, brisket, breaded baked chicken, and kreplach. In her later years, she loved going to the farmers markets in Skokie and Evanston. And so my mom liked to prepare meals for Passover, Hanukkah, and Thanksgiving with family. We spent it with our grandparents, of my Auntie Lois and Uncle Alan and cousins many, many times over the years. And so she also would prepare for birthday parties for for me and my sister, and birthday parties for my dad, and even a sweet 16 for me, and Halloween parties a couple times. And she even helped organize a 50th wedding anniversary for my grandparents, Hannah and Bob. They were at a local restaurant. Now, my teenage years were turbulent. My teenage years? That mean more.
They are teenage years.
Well, right. Probably due to my hormones, I'm guessing. Maybe there were other factors, but I didn't like to communicate with my parents. I wasn't a bad kid. I didn't do drugs, nor run around with a bad crowd. Time and maturity healed my poor relationship with my mom and dad. I think going to a Catholic college, St. Xavier College, also helped, and maybe going to nursing school, that maybe helped too. So by the time I was in my 20s, my communication was improving with my mom and dad. I feel my mom blossomed in the last 40 years of her life. She was more relaxed. She developed more interest and empathy for others. And she just developed an interest in enjoying life, especially with me by her side. I always thought that the last 40 years with my mom and dad and all I did for them made up for those terrible teenage years. I guess it was worth it for them. Everything I did for and with my mom in these last years were done out of love for her. I enjoyed spending time with her. Things that we enjoyed together were holiday meals with family and friends, including the Schmidt family. What else? We went to movies, farmers markets together. We went to Lake Michigan parks in Chicago and Evanston, local plays in downtown Chicago and New York. Bird watching with me, she enjoyed that too. We traveled to see Aunt Pearl of blessed memory and cousins Gwen and Marlene, Marlene is here today in New York. So even once she was on oxygen since 2014 and needed a wheelchair to get around for long distances, she still enjoyed going places with me, exploring parks and museums. She loved going to Mother's Day celebrations at Ivy's house, and Hanukkah at Julie's house, and July 4th at Nancy's house. So you guys made a difference in her life, in my life too. So Mom didn't grow up with a formal Jewish education. I guess I'll skip that because it just wasn't part of what they did in their family, at least for girls. Maybe, I don't know if the boys did, but, the boys, meaning Uncle Alan. I don't think they could afford it, was part of it. But she made sure we had a Jewish education. We were bat mitzvahed, my sister and I. So anyways, so my mom discovered, I'm trying to leave out stuff that it's already said, so I'm sorry, I'm stumbling a little bit. So 7 years ago or 8 years ago, she discovered Devar Emmett. She enjoyed their traditional Shabbat services with their wonderful music, and she loved the people, and they loved her. She may not have said that she loved you, but if she was still around, I'm sure at some point I would have gotten her to tell you that. But saying I love you was not easy for her. She did love me. I had no doubt about that. But saying those words were a little hard. But I started learning how to say that with her in the last 4 or 5 years. And she would say, I loved you, to me. And sometimes she would stumble, but I knew she loved me. What else? So back to the Devar Emmett, she just, it was a wonderful place to go, Jewish music and of course the traditional Jewish, the kiddush lunch afterwards was really nice too. The synagogue, Devar Emmett, really made such a big difference in my mom's life. I don't know how it would have proceeded if she didn't have you guys. I don't know if it would have been as long. Anyways, or as happy. you really increased the quality of her life by being able to go there. Okay. Oh, she loved your wife, Rebitson Carla, her egg salad. and
Which is at the ship.
Oh yeah. And she, she would bring it over to my mom's house on occasion, because she knew my mom liked it. Oh, I mean, since the pandemic, when my mom couldn't get to the temple, so and Rabbi or whoever was dropping off the prayer books for my mom so she could follow the services, doing it by Zoom, and you brought the service pamphlet once a week to her, and anything that would be of interest to her regarding your temple service. And I know she appreciated it if she didn't say thank you. And I'm saying thank you. I mean, I have to say, I was I am very thankful for all you did for my mom. Where's Rachel. Rachel, the Reb, and and Dawn and Robin and all the other people at the temple that, loved my mom and really just made a difference in her life. Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, since the pandemic, she really couldn't go out much. I mean, probably the last 6 months of her life, she really couldn't go out because of her oxygen limitations. No, you know what? I think it was the last 3 months. Maria, I don't know. I don't know if Maria heard me. Maria would take my mom driving around. I think maybe it was just the last 3 months she couldn't. 3 months? Yeah, she hasn't been able to get out because of her limitations with her oxygen. But Maria took her, when she was able, she took her to bingo, she took her to temple every Saturday, and then she drove her around the lake shore. And they enjoyed, stopping at the parking lots at the beaches and just watching people and watching the children and the lake. And, that was the only thing my mom could do at that point. So was my mom hardworking? Yeah, absolutely, she was. She was a hardworking woman. Yeah, the house was always clean. We always had food, and our meals were always provided. Yeah, she was a very clean, tidy. She cleaned the house. She took care of the yard for a while, but then she had landscapers. But she was hardworking. She did a lot of stuff for me. She would, make me, when I was younger, when my kids were younger, when my mom would drive across the city on the expressway to visit me, she would bring food that she prepared at home. I'm sure there's other things that I could probably think about later, but a really nice memory I have of my mom is that we used to go to the cemeteries once or twice a year. We would go to this cemetery to see our family here, and then we would go to Waldheim Cemetery to see the Arborman and other Schmidt side of the family. Does anyone have a Kleenex? Oh, thank you. My dog's is one. Thanks. I really enjoyed that. I really like going to cemeteries. Maybe that's how I learned to like going to cemeteries. And I know not everybody does. And I understand why, or whatever, it's fine. But I did enjoy, maybe it was partly because I was going with my mom. And I don't know, I just love visiting my family, who are now deceased. But, I'm remembering when I come to the cemetery, I remember them. I remember the feeling inside, how it feels to be with them when they were alive. Anyways, so, Mom, this is the last time we're going to the cemetery together. And, you know what? You think your parents are going to be with you for forever? And of course, we know that's not going to happen. So I was sad to see my mom go, but, I understand. She lived a long, rich life, but it was time for her. And I'm very thankful that I had her as a mom. You know, she wasn't the perfect mother. She made mistakes, as all parents do. And I just, I said I forgave her for the mistakes she made, and she forgave me for the mistakes I made. Anyways, so she just really blossomed in the last 40 years. Other people have told me the same thing, and I'm glad for that. So anyways, I just want to say thank you to Maria, her caregiver for the last 7 years. Because without Maria, my mother could not live by herself. Maria managed her many medications, her oxygen needs, her activities, and her food requirements. Anyways, so thank you, Maria. I also want to thank her doctors, because without her doctors, she would not be able to be here. I want to thank her longtime Dr. Cliff Ireland, who was an internist at St. Francis Hospital in Evanston. I want to thank Dr. Pappas and Dr. Tatulis at Christ Hospital. They're the heart surgeons who did her last heart surgery. Was it 2014 or 2015? 2014. The only reason why my mom was given the opportunity to have that surgery because when Dr. Tatulis was talking to her, to interview her, my mom noticed one of his buttons on his shirt was unbuttoned. So my mom told him that, and he said that was partly why he decided. I mean, the fact was she had it in her head she was with it pretty much. You could have a conversation. So she, assuming so he knew she could work through the recovery of this open heart surgery. But anyways, it was just a funny story about the button. Anyways, so the other doctors were Dr. David Naiman out of Evanston Hospital. He's her newest cardiologist that we never met in person, but he and his nursing staff were very helpful to my mom in her last months. It made her life in hospice much more comfortable. I want to thank North Shore Hospice out of Evanston Hospital. They made a big difference in my mom's life. Hospice is really the way to go if you're able to. I know family has done it. Other people, friends have had hospice. It's a wonderful type of treatment for the end-of-life care. And I guess that's it. And I want to thank Chicago Jewish Funerals. They're really helpful in this difficult time. And I think it's time for Doug? No, I think Shinny. Oh, Shinny, I'm sorry. Yeah, Shinny.
I wrote a letter to my grandmother. Hi, Grandma M. I've missed your voice and presence the last few days. I keep expecting to hear you call out my name. The morning you left, I discovered lilies of the valley growing under a bush in the front, and it made me think of your love for beautiful flowers. I always loved how your eyes would light up when you were excited or happy about something. Like how the birds who would come to eat from the feeder on your balcony. How I loved your chicken and potatoes and carrots in the oven. You would always tell me not to eat the chicken skin. And I was always tempted to do it anyway. For breakfast, you used to make me oatmeal, and you would mix in the milk and sugar to perfection. And as much as I tried over the years to make it like you did, it never came out just right like yours. Grandma, all these years since we left for Israel, you always accepted me in your home and in your heart. I felt at home always coming to visit you. Our midnight chats, lying together on your bed, became our ritual, where you filled me in on the events and stories of your childhood and life in general. Over time, Grandma, I felt how you opened up more easily. I used to tell you, like Isla, that I love you, and for you it was hard to say those words. But you did eventually, and oh, how our hugs improved over the years. I am so thankful I had this chance to have one last midnight chat with you. This was the night before she passed. We talked about the other side and what it may be like. I told you I thought it is a place of lightness and peace. You smiled and looked thoughtful, and you told me that you wished to see your parents again. Grandma M, I am so proud of you. Your life was not always a piece of cake. You would tell me that your mother, Grandma Hannah, was a strong lady, a fighter, and successful. Well, Grandma M, you were a strong lady too, a fighter, and your life full of endless successes. From your words before you passed, I understood you felt blessed, full of gratitude for the people in your life. You smiled and told me you were happy to be here, and happy that I came to be with you. I am forever grateful to have been so lucky in life, to have had a most wonderful grandmother as you. And I love you.
Mildred Weinstein. My mother-in-law was a native Chicagoan, born in Albany Park, graduate of Von Steuben High School and Wright Junior College. Except for a semester at University of Iowa, she lived her entire life in Chicago, Skokie, and Lincolnwood. She grew up in the 1930s during the Great Depression, which left a lasting imprint from frequent housing moves and change of schools. It also underscored the importance and support of family support in hard times. In later years, she would frequently praise her mom, Grandma Hannah's intellect and determination to succeed as a force that propelled them through those trying times. As an adult, she raised two accomplished daughters. Shortly after I met and married her younger daughter, Isla, Mildred was able to retire and start a new phase of her life. She moved just a few blocks south from Skokie to Lincolnwood in a new townhouse, which her brother's construction company had built, and she was always proud of that. She participated in group study for an adult B'nai Mitzvah. She volunteered to help with resettlement of Jewish families from Russia and had an ongoing friendship with the Polniak family. She spent a lot of time with her mom, such that at one point it seemed they were so inseparable we called them the Bobbsey twins. She enjoyed kibitzing in her social groups, whether at the Levy Senior Center or Devar Emmett Synagogue, and especially with family near and far. She would listen intently and occasionally interrupt conversation saying, "I have a question and I need to ask it now before I forget." And it was usually pretty insightful. When she was 89 and had such severe heart failure that she would require 2 new heart valves, the heart surgeon was trying to assess if she was an appropriate risk for surgery. She was able to converse well, learned that the surgeon grew up in Lincolnwood, that he was of Greek origin, where he lived, and then admonished him to button up because a shirt button was unbuttoned. At that point, the surgeon appreciated her good cognition and agreed to surgery. Thankfully, this, with the support of caregiver Maria and family, gave her 6.5 years longer life and allowed her to be able to welcome 4 great-grandsons, the last one just 3 weeks ago, and 2 more due soon. Toward the end of her life, she was more reflective and frequently expressed appreciation for family, for all of her family, for all the cousins who had come to visit and stay in touch with her, and of course her immediate family. She would tell Isla and me that she hit the jackpot with us. And Isla was the ace in her hole, ace in the hole. Yeah, she was nice to say that. Isla would spend countless hours just to help enrich her mom's life, taking her places despite the oxygen and the extra effort that required. Well, we were all enriched by her and hit the jackpot with her, and we'll miss her.
Oh, okay. I'm Ben. I'm my grandson of Mildred. I think one thing I'm struck with my grandma was her curiosity about the future, even in the last years of her life. I think this was kind of her way of connecting with me. I've lived in DC the past 6 years, but whenever I call her, whenever I see her, she says, "Are we okay as a country? What's going to happen?" And I say, of course, things will get better. I mean, I'd confidently say that, pretending I had some sort of inside scoop, even though I really was just trying to placate her and myself. She'd say, I want to live long enough to see Donald Trump voted out of office. She'd say that consistently. And she'd say, what's the future of America? Will Biden be able to fix America? And just even when I was talking to her last weekend, will he be reelected in 2024? What is our future? And that always struck me. I mean, being in her 90s, how much she cared about the future and her curiosity. I tell her, if people in their 70s and their 80s are running this country, she should run for office. She had a real pride for being an American. And then she'd do that thing, that shrug, and close her eyes. And then she'd say, listen. I think everyone has their mannerisms. I say, some people say, she would say, listen. And she'd say, listen, I'm very proud to be American. I've had a great life. I have a great family. And that she was really proud of her country and of her life and of her community. And, whenever she said, listen, I think my younger self, I would not necessarily be as responsive, but as I got older, I really did appreciate what she had to say. And after our conversations or after seeing her, she would never do a bear hug. I mean, I'm not someone who's very affectionate at well, but she always give me that nice, firm pat on the shoulders, on the back, and say, it's going to be okay. And I think there was very much a kindred spirit. And it's very sad that she's not going to be around, but I think she's looking forward to the future in her own way, and so am I.
Rachel's now going to be sharing with us from Ann Arbor. This is Mildred's granddaughter.
Start. Hello, everyone. I'm another grandchild of Mildred, Rachel. So, Grandma Mildred lived to be 96. That's really old. The year she was born, 1925, The Great Gatsby was published. The period between World War I and World War II ushered in modern technologies like cars, radios, airplanes, and televisions that we take for granted today. So it's crazy to think of what the world was like then, not to mention the Great Depression. But what I think is really interesting is if you go back 96 years before Grandma Mildred was born, that's the year 1829. It just shows you how long of a life Grandma had and how much she's lived through. If you go back 96 years before Mildred was born, slavery was a common institution in the U.S. and the world. California and Texas were still part of Mexico, not a part of the U.S. But I don't want to talk about, spend this completely talking about history because I'm not a history buff for one. I'd like to share a few memories of my grandmother. When I was growing up, I remember Grandma being a pretty stressed out person. But as I got older, I remember her mellowing out considerably. The first time I realized she was changing is when I was in college, and Grandma went out to dinner with some of my friends and I. Afterwards, my friends were talking about how funny Grandma Mildred was, and I was shocked that they had that impression of her because that's just not the impression I had in my mind. But once they pointed it out to me, I started to notice her silliness and lightheartedness. One of my favorite memories of Grandma Mildred was when my husband Itza and I visited Chicago the week after we got engaged. We spent a sunny spring day with my parents and Grandma Mildred, and everyone was in a great mood that day. But in particular, looking back, we remember Grandma Mildred being in a good mood. And when Grandma is in a good mood, you know that things are good, and it just makes things feel all the more special because you don't get that all the time. But what has struck me most recently about Grandma Mildred is how much she has delighted in my son, Alan. Grandma never struck me as a baby or a little kid person. I always connected with her better as I got older. But when my son Alan spent time with Grandma Mildred these past 2 years, she just lit up. I don't think I've ever seen her so engaged and happy. She loved watching him mess around with his toys at her house and run around. It didn't even faze her when the cute little grabby toddler broke off one of the blades to her ceiling fan. Luckily, we were able to replace it. She even gave Alan a monkey doll that she had in her living room for as long as I could remember, because one time when he visited, he enjoyed playing with it. When we talked on the phone, she would always ask about Alan, and our conversations would last significantly longer than they did before he was around. And she would always tell me that he's doing so well and give me lots of encouragement. And as a new mother, that was really encouraging and comforting to hear. And lastly, she was so excited that Alan was getting a little brother and kept on trying to guess what his name would be. And she knew it would be a Dutch name, Douwe. I'm sad that she won't get to see her great-grandkids grow up, but I'm thankful that she got to meet them, and I will miss Grandma Mildred.
Thank you for sharing. I think it's wonderful to hear from the family, the impact of a single individual's life. And I'm sure if we were all to take time to talk about Mildred, how she's impacted us in different ways. And it's just these memories that we want to not forget. Okay? I'm going to ask at this time that if the gentleman can lower the casket. I'm going to read a statement. This is Jewish documents. It's what they would call, part of the literature that's not in the biblical text, but it's like wisdom literature written in the time of the Second Temple. Ben Sira wrote these words. It says, "Fear not death. We are destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Bewail the dead, hide not your grief. Do not restrain your mourning. But remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory rest, and be consoled when the soul departs." And certainly there is the sorrow, the intensity of sorrow. In our Jewish tradition, there's Shiva. There's a week of deep mourning, followed by 30 days of mourning, and then 11 months of mourning. But the The idea is for this sorrow to slowly abate. All right, it goes from a deep sorrow when we think of the individual to a memory, almost a good memory of the individual as we move forward in our own lives. And I know as you mourn the loss of your mother and your grandmother, and that the last thing you want to do is ever forget her, and you won't, because of the impact that she had on your lives. But the intensity of the sorrow will decline, and that's okay. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are man's few days in eternity. The good things in life last for limited days, but a good name endures forever. The good that you remember from her life, think about your own life and consider, how am I living that out? How am I living that out myself? O God, our Father, you redeem our souls from the grave. You are the rock of our salvation. Forsake us not in time of trouble, in days of distress and desolation. Help us to endure, O Lord, for we have placed our hope in you. Mildred went to Israel. She and I talked about that trip. And it's traditional. It's become our tradition, at least here in America. I don't know if it's always been to go ahead and include a little bit of dirt from the land of Israel. I have to wonder one of these days if they're going to run out. But I'm going to go ahead and pour this right on the casket before they cap it. The scripture speaking about the fact that when the Messiah returns, that all the Jewish people will be brought back to the land of Israel. And I believe that the dead will be resurrected and that we will reign. There'll be an actual Jewish state without all the tsuras. Sorry. There'll be I'm not sure how much I missed, but I'll say it again. The times when the Messiah returns, that all Jewish people will be back in the land and that there will be a Jewish state without tsuras. No political crises, no rockets from Gaza or Hezbollah from the Lebanon, you know. And we look forward to that day. They're going to be capping the vault here in a moment. I'm going to read a couple of lines, and then we're going to rise for Kaddish. Eternal God, our Creator, with the gift of your Spirit we are formed. You take it in return, and we are but dust. We are grateful for the many blessings in the life of Mildred Weinstein. Bowed by grief because of their loss, her mourners turn to you, seeking comfort and light. Lord of compassion, grant them solace and strength. Reinforce their faith, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Adonai natan v'Adonai lechak, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach. The Lord has given and the Lord has taken away. Praise be the name of the Lord. All right, I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask us all to stand. We're going to recite Kaddish. Kaddish is not It's not the prayer for the dead. That's not what Kaddish is. It's an ancient Aramaic prayer. It's really a piece of liturgy to remind us of the greatness of God in the midst of our sorrow. That's what Kaddish is. And we recite it to honor those who have passed away, our loved ones. The responsibility is to recite it daily for the year of mourning, to be reminded of your mother and to allow yourself to be able to grieve as well as remembering the greatness of God. And it's totally fine for those of you who also would like to recite Kaddish on behalf of just your memories of Mildred, to honor her and honor God. But it is in essence, I think, the obligation of the children to recite Kaddish for their parents, for their mother, to honor them, as the scriptures teach us, to honor our mothers and fathers. And this is a very tangible way. It's also interesting because in a moment we'll be directed regarding covering the grave. You know, there's one thing someone can never do for themselves. They can never provide for themselves a proper burial. The Jewish tradition has made it clear that it's our responsibility, the responsibility of the living, the responsibility of the loved ones, to properly bury our loved one. And so we're doing all of this. It's not just, a ritual and this is a mitzvah in the purest sense. This is a good deed we're doing to honor Mildred, because she cannot do this herself. You've all been blessed by her in different ways. This is, in essence, your way of blessing her and honoring her and participating, not just in the ceremony, but in the mitzvah of burying her, which we'll be doing in just a moment. I will lead you as you recite. I will go slow, but let's recite Kaddish in honor of Mildred. Yet Gadal, Vayet Kadash, Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Devera Kirute, Be'amlich Malchute, B'chayachon Uv Yomechon, Uv Chaye Dekol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Vizman Karib V'imru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mevarach Leolam Olalmei Almaya, Yit Barach, V'yishtabach, V'yit Pa'ar, V'yit Romam, V'yit Naseh, V'yit Hadar, V'yit Ale, V'yit Halal, Shemei Rechurishah, Berechu. Elo Mincho Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechamata, Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru. Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru. Amen. Osei Shalom Bimromav, Huya Osei Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru. Amen. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the service here at the cemetery. For those of you who wish to participate in the burial, the tradition is to place 3 measures of earth, and then just plate what we're going to be using is a cup here, and do that. And if we can kindly ask one of the family members to represent Lynn from Israel, so she can just do that, and she'll be watching. So okay, the shiva is going to continue at Devar Emet at 7800 Niles Avenue in Skokie, and the memorial contributions to our synagogue, Devar Emet Messianic Synagogue, or the Levy Senior Center. For those of you who are here, that information is on the service folder. For those of you who are online, you can find that information on our website. So for those of you who wish to come forward, so one of the daughters here, and then if you want to represent your mother, and then everyone else can come forward. We're going to keep the online version going, or the streaming going, just for a few more moments, and then we'll let you know when we conclude that. But we are going to turn the volume off. folks, if you want to take a moment to sign the registry, we have it here. We'll also have it at the synagogue. I spoke beautiful, very, very nice. I love when families speak. It's nice.
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely, right.
Kaylee, just use the mic. I use the mic. Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who wish to stay while they're doing the tractor, you can do that. You don't have to.
Did you finish your project?
Oh, he did?
That was the introduction.
Okay, maybe I hope.
And register.
Yeah.
Like what you said. What a nice, clean speech. A nice one. From the heart. I mean, from paper. And lived a little.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to cover the grave, so if you have not placed earth, please come forward.
First scratch. When they left him. Sorry. It was nice that you said. Yeah, it was. Thank you. Like from the heart, because you're from DC. And you're you got the inside scoop. But you were right on target. Oh, okay. I was worried about.
For those of you online, at this time we're going to conclude the streaming. Shabbat Shalom.